The shot cracked through the morning air so sharply that Jonah Hawley thought the sky itself had split open. He had heard gunfire his whole life, sometimes far off, sometimes far too close, but this one had a metallic, desperate ring to it. A sound fired by the kind of man who wanted to silence something quickly. Jonah froze where he was standing in the dusty street of Hawkstone Ridge, boots planted, breath held, his empty coin purse hanging like an accusation from his belt. Hawkstone Ridge was a town that looked fine from a distance. Wooden storefronts, a windmill squeaking in the breeze, lamps glowing amber behind windows, but up close, it smelled of rust, sweat, and secrets. And this morning, something was terribly wrong. People in town rarely stopped moving, not even when trouble brewed. But right now, every soul on the boardwalk had gone still. Jonah watched the dust swirl around their boots as they stared toward the alley between the barber shop and the saddlery. Jonah took a step forward. Then another. He didn't have a gun. He'd pawned it a week ago for food, but the instinct to move, to help, pulled him harder than hunger ever had. When the figure finally stumbled out of the alley, Jonah felt his breath leave his chest. It was a girl, barefoot, Apache. Her long black hair was tangled with dust, and her dress torn at the hem as though she had run through thorns. She was maybe 16, no older, and she was holding her left arm close to her ribs like it hurt to breathe. But it was her silence that shook him most. She didn't scream. She didn't ask for help. She didn't speak at all. She just stood there in the street beneath the rising sun, her dark eyes blank with shock. Behind her, two men rushed out of the alley. Ranch hands. Worn leather vests, spurred boots, dust on their faces, but something else on their expressions. Something ugly. Fear. Not fear of the girl. Fear of being caught. The first man saw the gathered crowd and forced a grin that didn't reach his eyes. "Nothin' here." He lied loudly. "Just a trespasser causing trouble," but Jonah saw the smear of blood on the man's sleeve, and the bruise forming on the girl's jaw. Something inside him snapped. "Leave her be," Jonah said, stepping forward before he could overthink it. The two ranch hands turned toward him. Jonah felt the heat of their stares. He was lean, unarmed, and broke a nobody. But he didn't waver. One of the men spat. "Ain't your concern, Hawley." "You made it my concern the moment you chased a child into the street," Jonah replied. His voice steady even though his knees weren't. The girl lifted, her eyes to look at him for the first time, wide, searching, almost surprised that someone had spoken on her behalf. She tried to say something. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. She swallowed, shook her head faintly, and lowered her gaze again. "See?" the man said. "Can't even talk. Wild little thing." "We're taking her to Sheriff Darlow." "No, you're not," Jonah cut in. Several townsfolk gasped softly. Jonah didn't care. He didn't care that he had nothing to back his words but anger and a half-rotten sense of morality. He only knew what he saw. Two grown men had hurt a young girl, and now they wanted to disappear her somewhere no one would ask questions. The second ranch hand's jaw tightened. "You looking to get yourself buried, pauper?" Jonah stood taller. "If I am, dig the hole straight. Saves you the trouble later." A ripple of uneasy laughter moved through the watching crowd. The two men exchanged a glance, uncertain now, calculating. The crowd wasn't on their side. Not today. The first man scowled and jerked his head. "Come on," he muttered. "She ain't worth it." They backed off toward their horses, muttering profanity under their breath, and within seconds they were gone in a cloud of dust. Only when they were completely out of sight did Jonah exhale. The girl swayed slightly. Jonah stepped forward instinctively. "Easy," he murmured. "You're safe now." But she wasn't. He knew those men. They'd return. They'd bring more. He crouched slowly to her level. "You hurt anywhere?" he asked softly. The girl blinked at him, her expression unreadable. She opened her mouth, tried again to speak. Nothing. She shook her head once, frustrated, as if the words were trapped behind a locked door inside her chest. You don't have to talk, Jonah assured her. Just nod or shake your head if you can. She nodded faintly. Did those men hurt you? He asked gently. A pause. Then another nod. Jonah clenched his fists so tight his palms burned. Behind him, a few townsfolk began murmuring, already losing interest. Nobody wanted to pick a fight with the ranch that controlled half the valley. Someone should fetch the sheriff, a woman murmured. Jonah shot her a look. Darla won't do a thing. Everyone knows he's on the Harvey Ranch payroll, which meant there was only one person who could protect the girl, him, even if he had no money, no gun, and no idea what kind of mess she was tangled in. Jonah stood and offered her his hand. Come on, my place is small, but it's safe. We'll figure this out. The girl hesitated deeply, visibly. Trust wasn't something she could give easily, not after whatever had happened in that alley. But the tension in her shoulders loosened a fraction. She placed her hand in his. It was shaking. Jonah led her down the dirt road toward the edge of town, where his shack sat tucked between a mesquite grove and the dry riverbed. Along the way, he tried to speak softly, hoping to reassure her. My name's Jonah Hawley, he said. Folks here just call me Hawley or Boy, depending how much they want from me. He smiled faintly. What should I call you? She didn't answer. After a moment, she tapped her chest gently with her fingers, then drew a shape in the air, a swift curve, almost like a bird's wing. Jonah watched carefully. Wing? He guessed. She shook her head. Another gesture, her hand rising gracefully, then lowering. Jonah frowned in thought. Fall? The girl hesitated, then nodded once. Fall, Jonah repeated softly. That your name? She nodded again. A small, barely there smile flickered across her lips. Could have been relief. Could have been gratitude. Fall. A name as quiet as she was. When they reached his shack, little more than a one-room wooden box, Fall looked around cautiously. Jonah opened the door and gestured inside. It ain't much, he admitted, but the roof only leaks on Thursdays. The floor's mostly solid and nobody bothers me out here. He grabbed a blanket and offered it to her. Sit, rest. I'll get some water. As Jonah turned to fill a tin cup from the barrel outside, he heard a soft thud behind him. He spun around. Fall had collapsed to her knees, one hand gripping her side. Sweat trickled down her temple. Jonah rushed back inside. Hey. Easy, he knelt beside her. You're hurt worse than you let on. Fall shook her head stubbornly and tried to stand again, but her legs trembled. Stop, Jonah whispered. Please. Her breathing was shallow. Jonah noticed a dark stain spreading beneath the fabric at her ribs. Blood. He carefully lifted the edge of her torn dress. A bruise, ugly purple and swollen, stretched across her side, but beneath it there was a cut, deep, fresh, not from a fall. From a blade. Jonah's chest tightened with anger. They did this to you, he murmured. Fall didn't respond. Her eyes had closed, her face pinched with pain. Jonah tore a strip from his own shirt and pressed it gently against the wound. I've got you, he whispered. You're safe here. I promise. But even as he said it, he heard something in the distance. Hoofbeats. Slow, heavy, purposeful. Jonah stood and went to the window, heart pounding as the sound grew louder. 3 riders emerged from the dust. Ranch hands. Same vest style. Same cruel posture. They stopped 50 yards from his shack. One raised a hand to shield his eyes from the sun. He shouted, Hawley, bring the girl out, now. Jonah turned back to Fall, who lay trembling but conscious, eyes wide with fear. He knelt beside her again. "Fall," he whispered. "I need you to trust me." "Can you stand?" She stared at him, breath shaking. Another shout from outside. "Last chance." Fall took Jonah's hand. Barely painfully, she rose to her feet. Jonah squeezed her fingers. "We're going out the back," he said. "And we're not letting them take you." For the first time since he'd seen her, Fall's eyes sparked with something fierce. Not fear, defiance. And together they slipped out the back door into the blazing, dust-choked morning, running for their lives. The moment the back door of Tanner Briggs's shop creaked shut behind them, Elias felt the weight of what he had just done settle on his shoulders like a wet wool blanket. Outside, the street was waking up, doors slamming, wagons rolling, men shouting to their horses, but in here, inside this dim, dusty storeroom, everything felt muffled, smothered, fragile. He could hear Maraya's breathing, shallow and uneven, each inhale edged with pain. Old Tanner Briggs knelt on the wooden floor beside her, his hands trembling as he dabbed away the dried blood on her shoulder. "Bullet went clean through," he muttered, but he didn't look relieved. "Still, she lost a lot." Elias knelt opposite him. "Can you save her?" Tanner glanced up, his eyes old but sharp. "Can try. But this girl, she ain't just any girl, boy. You know what happens if Deputy Riker catches wind you're hiding an Apache woman?" Elias swallowed hard but didn't back down. "I couldn't leave her." Tanner grunted. "You never could walk past someone bleeding." He leaned close to Maraya. "You're safe here for now, miss." Maraya's eyelids fluttered. Her voice, barely a whisper, escaped her cracked lips. "No, safe. Nowhere." Elias leaned closer. "You're safe with me." Her gaze met his for a heartbeat, pain, fear, and something else he couldn't name. Then her eyes closed again. Tanner worked in silence after that, grinding herbs, heating water, stitching the torn flesh with a slow, practiced hand. Elias held Maraya steady while she winced and flinched, though she never made a sound louder than a breath. By the time the sun pushed fully over the horizon, the bleeding had slowed and Tanner wrapped her shoulder tight. "That should hold." Tanner wiped sweat from his forehead. "But she needs rest, water, and, God willing, a chance to heal in peace." Elias exhaled shakily. "Thank you." Tanner rose, grabbed Elias's arm, and pulled him aside. His voice dropped low. "Son, why was she running? And who shot her?" Elias hesitated because he didn't know. "I found her on the street," he said, "being dragged. She said someone tried to take her. A man with a scar." Tanner stiffened. "Scar on his cheek?" "Yeah." Tanner closed his eyes. "That'd be Riker's cousin Mason. He's been selling captures to bounty hunters. Apache, Navajo, doesn't matter. They take women, children, trade them like cattle." A cold wave rolled through Elias. Why isn't he arrested? Tanner looked at him like he'd asked why the sky was blue. "Because Cole Riker is the deputy of this town. And blood protects blood." Elias's jaw tightened. He looked back at Maraya, small, injured, but proud even in pain. He made a choice in that instant. "I'm not letting her fall back into their hands," he said. Tanner sighed deeply, a heavy, defeated sound. "I figured as much." "But Elias, you can't save everyone." "I can try," he said, jaw set. Tanner squeezed his shoulder once before stepping toward the door. "Keep to the back rooms. Don't let anyone see her. And for the love of God, stay away from the deputies." The moment Tanner opened the front door, Elias heard boots clattering on the street. Voices, the stomp of a horse. Elias froze. Then he heard the one voice he feared most. Deputy Cole Riker. The door of the shop slammed open. "Tanner!" Deputy Cole Riker's voice boomed. You seen a wounded Apache woman pass through town? I got reports someone dragged her away from the main street before sunrise. We found blood. We found tracks. Elias tightened his grip on the wall, staying in the shadows of the storeroom where no light seeped through. Tanner's voice stayed even. Haven't seen any Apache today. What's the fuss? Riker's boots clicked sharply on the wooden floor as he walked inside. Elias could hear him sniffing the air like a hound. She's dangerous, Riker said. Stole horses. Cut a man up. Shot another. Elias clenched his teeth. Lies. Maraya could barely stand. Tanner scoffed. Sounds like a lot of work for someone bleeding out. Riker's boots stopped dangerously close to the storeroom door. Elias held his breath. Then a voice Mason's came from outside. Cole. Found more blood by the troughs. Fresh. Riker turned. We'll search the back of town next. If she's hiding, she won't hide long. The deputy paused again. Then he spat on the floor. She's worth money, he hissed. And I'm not losing that bounty because some idiot farmer played hero. Elias's heart thundered. He waited until the boots and voices faded down the road before emerging into the main shop. Tanner looked years older. He suspects, Tanner whispered. He won't find her here, Elias said. You don't know that. Elias didn't respond because he couldn't deny the truth. For the next hour, Elias sat beside Maraya while she slept fitfully. Her brow furrowed. Her fingers twitched. Once she murmured something in Apache soft, pained, frightened. He didn't understand the words, but the feeling was clear. When her eyes finally opened again, the room was dim. Tanner had gone to the front of the shop. A single lantern cast a warm circle around them. Maraya blinked, confused at where she was. Her gaze darted around the room, landing finally on Elias. You. Stayed, she whispered. Wouldn't make much sense to leave you now, Elias said softly. She studied him. Why risk? You know what they do to anyone helping Apache. I know, he replied. But I also know what happens if I don't help. Her expression shifted, barely noticeable, but softer. Your people? He hesitated. Do they know where you are? Will they come? She took a slow breath. Pain flickered in her eyes, but she hid it well. They will come. Hawkstone. He always finds what is lost. Hawkstone, Elias repeated. Your husband? She shook her head. War leader. Protector of the valley tribes. And you? Her eyes met his, steady and unreadable. I am a messenger. I was crossing through White Bluff territory to deliver warning. Someone betrayed our path. We were ambushed. I ran. I did not run fast enough. Elias felt ice in his veins. Who betrayed you? She stared at the wooden floor. A man with a scar. He told the soldiers where we crossed. Riker's cousin. Elias's pulse pounded. Maraya's voice grew faint. I must return. Hawkstone must know. Or more blood will fall. Elias shook his head firmly. You're not going anywhere until you can stand without bleeding again. You do not decide for me, she said, lifting her chin. He smiled weakly. You're right. But your body's deciding for you? She frowned, as if irritated to find he was right. But she didn't argue further. Drink, Elias said, lifting the cup Tanner had left. He held it to her lips gently. She hesitated a heartbeat, then drank. Something shifted in the room. A fragile quiet. A flicker of trust. But the moment broke when heavy boots pounded outside the back door. Elias froze. Maraya reached instinctively for the knife that wasn't there. The back door rattled. Then, Elias, open up. Tanner's strained whisper came through the wood. Quick. Elias yanked the door open. Tanner stumbled in, breathless, face pale. Riker doubled back. He's heading this way. He's got Mason with him. Maraya's hand shot out, gripping Elias's sleeve. If he sees me, he won't, Elias said. We'll move. Move where? Tanner hissed. Every building in town's being checked. Elias looked toward the far wall of the storeroom, a wall lined with crates and barrels. Behind them was something most townsfolk didn't know about: a narrow crawlway that led to the abandoned root cellar of the old saloon next door. Tanner had once shown Elias while drunk, bragging about the best hiding place for cards or whiskey this side of Texas. He grabbed Maraya carefully but firmly. We go underground. Tanner blinked. Son, that place is half collapsed. Better than being caught, Elias said. Outside, a fist pounded the shop's front door. Deputy Riker's voice thundered. Tanner, open the damn door. We know she's here. Maraya tensed, ready to run or fight. Elias gripped her hand. No noise, he whispered. The front door cracked under a heavy boot. Tanner flinched. Go. Quickly. Elias pulled Maraya behind the crates, prying open the loose floor panel Tanner once showed him. The crawl space breathed out cold, stale earth. Maraya hesitated. Trust me, Elias whispered. For a moment, she looked at him, truly looked. Then she nodded. He helped her down into the darkness. She winced but stayed silent. Elias dropped in after her, pulling the panel shut just as the front door burst open and Riker stormed inside, shouting. The crawl space was cramped, suffocating, pitch dark. Elias felt Maraya's trembling beside him. Or maybe it was his own. Above them, boots thudded. Crates were smashed. Tanner shouted. Riker snarled. Then a loud crash. A scream of pain. Tanner's voice. Elias's stomach twisted. Riker growled. Search every inch. She's worth a fortune alive. Maraya's breath beside him faltered. Elias reached out in the dark, gently taking her hand. Her fingers tightened around his. They waited, trapped beneath the floor as danger clawed inches above them. And Elias knew this wasn't just a rescue anymore. It was war. Elias had never known true darkness until he crawled through the cramped earth tunnel beneath Tanner Briggs's shop. Every inch forward scraped his elbows, filled his lungs with dust, and pressed the heavy weight of the world above him. Behind him, Maraya breathed in short, steady bursts, pushing herself despite the pain stitched into her shoulder. Above them, faint but unmistakable, came the thudding boots of Deputy Cole Riker. Turn the place upside down. Riker roared. She's here, I can feel it. Elias froze mid-crawl. Maraya's whisper brushed the back of his neck. Keep moving. But he hesitated. Something felt wrong. The tunnel seemed narrower than he remembered from Tanner's drunken demonstration years ago. Then he understood why. The earth ahead was collapsing. A mound of dried, loose soil blocked part of the path, sagging like a tired lung, and as he touched it, the dirt shifted dangerously. Maraya crawled closer behind him. It will hold, she murmured, though her voice trembled. No, Elias whispered back. It might collapse and bury us if we're not careful. Her hand brushed his shoulder lightly, then moved slow. Like a snake, silent. He nodded. Above them came shouting Tanner's hoarse voice, Riker's growling response, the sound of crates being smashed. Elias forced himself to breathe slow, then pushed one arm through the loose soil, then the other. A cascade of dust trickled down his neck. He gritted his teeth and moved forward inch by inch. When he emerged past the loose patch, he turned to help Maraya. But she wasn't behind him. A fresh wave of dread surged through him. Maraya, he whispered. A faint cough answered him. Then a soft grunt. The soil had shifted again, trapping her leg. Without thinking, Elias scrambled back, clawing through the dirt with both hands. His fingernails split. His palms burned. He felt nothing but panic. "I'm here," he said, shoving the heavier chunks aside. Maraya's silhouette emerged in the dimness. She wasn't panicking, she never did, but the strain on her face was unmistakable. "You should save yourself," she whispered. "Not a chance." He kept digging until her legs slipped free. She pushed herself forward with a wince, crawling until she reached solid earth. Elias followed, breathless and shaking. Above them, Riker's voice cut through. "Search the damn floors. If there's a crawl space, we find it." Maraya's eyes widened. She grabbed Elias's wrist. "We must hurry." They crawled faster, now no time for caution. The tunnel sloped downward sharply until they reached the wooden planks of the abandoned root cellar beneath the old saloon. Elias pushed up on the trapdoor. It creaked loud enough to make his blood run cold. He froze, no sound from above. He pushed again, slower. The trapdoor lifted. Cool, stale air washed over them. They climbed into the cellar. The room was barely lit through cracks in the warped floorboards above. Dust motes floated in the thin beams of light. Old barrels slumped against the walls. Broken crates littered the floor. Maraya leaned against one of the barrels, clutching her stitched shoulder. She was sweating, pale. "You okay?" Elias whispered. She nodded but didn't look convincing. "Just tired." He reached into Tanner's bundle and handed her the small canteen he'd grabbed before escaping the shop. She took it without hesitation this time, drinking deeply. Elias let out a shaky breath. "We need to get out of town." Riker's searching every building. Maraya nodded. "My people are 3 days east. If we reach the canyons, Hawkstone will find us." "Hawkstone?" Elias repeated. "Your war leader." She hesitated. "He saved me when I was young." "He saves many. He does not let Apache be hunted." Elias looked at her, really looked. There was strength behind her exhaustion, fire behind her fear, a lifetime of surviving behind her silence. "We'll get you back to him," Elias said. But before Maraya could respond, loud voices erupted above them in the saloon. Boots stomping. Men yelling. And then Deputy Riker's voice cut through like a blade. "Check the saloon. The cellar, too. If they crawled out, this is where they'd surface." Maraya tensed. Elias's heart dropped. "They can't find us," she whispered. "They won't," he said. "We'll slip out the back." He led her toward the old wooden door at the far end of the cellar. It was swollen from moisture, half rotted, but still sturdy. He tugged. It didn't budge. He tried again, putting his weight into it. Still nothing. Above them came another voice, Mason's. "The floorboards back here sound hollow." More footsteps. More boots. Maraya whispered, "We are trapped." No, we're not," Elias said, fingers digging into the wood. "I've gotten us this far, haven't I?" She didn't answer, but her hand rested briefly on his arm, a soft, fragile thank you. He pushed harder. The door groaned. He wedged his shoulder against it. The hinges creaked. A sharp crack echoed from above the sound of board splitting. They were about to break into the saloon cellar. Maraya clutched her knife. Tanner had given her one before they escaped. Her hand shook, not from fear, but from the blood loss. Elias braced himself and shoved. The door burst open. Cool morning sunlight poured through, blinding him. "Come on," he whispered. They slipped out the door into the scrub behind the saloon. The alley was empty. Riker's men were all inside. Elias grabbed Maraya's arm and hurried around the back of the buildings. "Wait," Maraya whispered suddenly. "What?" She pointed toward Tanner's shop across the street. Tanner was outside now, on his knees. Riker stood over him, gripping Tanner's shirt collar. Elias froze. "Tell me where they went," Riker shouted. Tanner spat blood into the dirt. "Go to hell, Cole." Riker backhanded him, sending him slumping sideways. Maraya's breath hitched not just from pain, but guilt. "He suffers because of me," she whispered. Elias's jaw tightened. "He suffers because Riker is a monster." Riker drew his revolver, shoving the barrel against Tanner's jaw. Last chance. Tanner closed his eyes. Elias took a step forward. Maraya grabbed his arm desperately. "No, Elias, no." Her fingers shook as she held him back. "You go, you die. And then I cannot reach my people." "But Tanner would want you to live," she whispered fiercely. Then her voice softened, curling into his chest. "Please." Elias stopped. He had never been begged like that before, not by someone strong, not by someone who trusted him with their life. Riker leaned close to Tanner. "Fine," he growled. "Let the coyotes have you." He shoved Tanner to the ground and motioned for his men. "Search the outskirts. They're running." As soon as the deputies rode off, Elias hurried toward Tanner. Maraya followed despite the pain slowing her steps. Tanner coughed as Elias knelt beside him. "You okay, old man?" Elias whispered. Tanner cracked a bloody smile. "Been hit harder." "By a sack of potatoes." Elias helped him sit up. Tanner grabbed his sleeve. "Boy, listen. They ain't giving up. Riker wants that bounty. He'll follow you all the way to the Apache lands if he has to." "I know," Elias said. Tanner's gaze sharpened. "Then you go east, through the Echo Canyons. Fastest route to the Apache. But beware, Riker knows that path too." Elias nodded. Tanner squeezed his arm once more. "And son, don't let her walk alone. You hear?" Elias looked at Maraya. "I won't," he said. Tanner let out a shaking breath. Good. They left him leaning against the shop wall. Elias promised to send help when they reached Hawkstone. As Elias and Maraya slipped into the thinning clusters of trees beyond town, Elias realized the weight of Tanner's last words. Don't let her walk alone. He glanced at Maraya. Her face was pale, her shoulders stiff, but her eyes were steady. "We have much ground to cover," she whispered. "We will," Elias said. "And danger behind us. Always?" They moved deeper into the wild terrain, sagebrush brushing their legs, red dust swirling at their heels. The distant horizon shimmered with heat and danger. After 2 hours of walking, Elias noticed Maraya's steps faltering. "You need rest," he said. "No, we must reach cover. You can barely stand." She swayed slightly, but shook her head. "Stopping means death." Elias exhaled sharply, stepped in front of her, and held her shoulders gently. "You're not dying on me," he whispered. "Not now. Not ever." For the first time since he met her, Maraya's facade cracked. Her eyes softened in a way he didn't expect, like she wasn't just surviving, but seeing him, really seeing him. But the moment broke when a distant echo rolled through the canyon walls. Hoofbeats. She tensed. Riker. They scrambled behind a cluster of boulders, crouching low. Dust plumed in the distance, 3 riders, moving fast, following their trail. Maraya gripped her knife. Elias gripped her hand. "We're not done yet," he whispered. And as the riders thundered closer, Maraya whispered back, "No, this is only the beginning." The moment Elias dragged Maraya behind the boulders, the echo of approaching hoofbeats grew sharper, slicing the silence of the canyon. Dust rolled in thick, reddish clouds as Deputy Cole Riker and 2 mounted men followed the trail like wolves. Maraya crouched beside Elias, gripping the knife Tanner had given her. Her knuckles were white. The wind carried the faint scent of blood hers, and Elias knew their tracks had betrayed them. "They're close," Maraya whispered. Elias peeked over the rock. "Too close." Riker's voice boomed through the canyon, amplified by the stone walls. "Elias, you ain't getting far. Hand over the woman and I won't gut you where you stand." Maraya's jaw clenched. "He lies." "Of course he lies," Elias muttered. "He shoots anything that breathes." Maraya shifted, her wounded shoulder trembling. Elias noticed how harsh her breathing had become shallow, tight, painful. The trek from town had drained her strength far more than she admitted. "We need to move," Elias said. "We can't outrun horses," she whispered. "No, but we can outsmart them." He scanned the terrain. Ahead, the canyon narrowed into a twisting throat of stone, a tight passage. Known locally as Raven's Cut, Elias had only been there once. When he was a boy, but he remembered one thing clearly. The canyon could swallow sound and spit out echoes that confused even seasoned riders. If they made it inside, they had a chance. He helped Maraya to her feet. She leaned into him for a moment, only a moment before steadying herself and nodding. "I can keep going." "You don't have to lie to me," he whispered. Her eyes softened. "I know." They moved quickly, keeping low as the canyon walls tightened around them like closing hands. Elias glanced back. Riker and his men had dismounted. They were on foot now, spreading out, guns drawn. Riker's voice carried behind them. "You think you can hide in the rocks, boy? I'll smoke you out." Elias swallowed hard. "He's getting crazier." "He wants the bounty," Maraya said. Elias helped her over a jagged ridge. "No, he wants control. And he hates the idea that someone slipped through his fingers." They rounded a bend and entered Raven's Cut. The canyon swallowed the sunlight, leaving them in cool, dim shadows. The air felt thick. Their footsteps echoed strangely. One step became 5, bouncing back in distorted whispers. Maraya grabbed Elias's sleeve. "This place. It speaks. It'll confuse them," Elias whispered. "If we're lucky." They moved deeper, the walls twisting and rising until the sky was a thin blue slit overhead. The echoes of Riker's men grew farther away, scattered, lost. For a moment, Elias thought they might truly escape. Then, a sharp crack split the air. A bullet slammed into the stone inches from Elias's head. He pulled Maraya down behind a rock. Riker's angry voice thundered through the canyon. "You think you can hide in my town and then run? I own these lands." Elias shouted back angrily, "You own nothing. You hurt innocent people and call it justice." Riker growled. "Innocent? She's Apache. She's worth gold to the forts, and I'm not losing it to a dirt-poor fool who thinks he's a hero." Maraya stiffened beside Elias. Her voice was barely audible. "He speaks as if we are animals." Elias looked at her, steady and sincere. "You're a better human than he'll ever be." Another gunshot ricocheted through the canyon. Riker's men were shooting randomly, hoping to strike something. Elias touched Maraya's cheek lightly. "We keep moving, quietly." She nodded. They crawled along the canyon floor, hugging the walls. Maraya winced every time her shoulder brushed the stone, but she never complained. Elias admired that her strength, her endurance, her refusal to surrender. After several minutes, the canyon widened, and there spread before them was a sliver of open desert, glowing red under the setting sun. Maraya inhaled sharply. "East of here, a half-day's walk?" "Hawkstone watches these plains." Relief flooded Elias, but the moment shattered when Riker appeared in the canyon exit a few hundred feet behind them. Revolver raised, dust swirling around his boots like wildfire. End of the line. He roared. Maraya stumbled. Elias caught her. "No," she whispered desperately. "Do not stay, run." "Not leaving you," he said. She looked at him, really looked as if memorizing him. Her eyes glistened. "Why?" "You owe me nothing." Elias exhaled shakily. "Because when I found you, I found a reason to fight." Behind them, Riker cocked his gun. "Sweet," he snarled. "But pointless." Elias stepped in front of Maraya. Riker fired. The bullet grazed Elias's arm, tearing fabric and skin. But Elias didn't fall, didn't falter. He raised his voice and screamed, "Hawkstone! Help!" Maraya's eyes widened with shock. "Elias," Riker laughed cruelly, "you think your yell means anything out here?" Elias ignored him. He cupped his hands around his mouth and yelled again, "Hawkstone! We need you!" A long, terrible silence followed. Riker leveled his gun again. "Goodbye, Elias." Maraya pulled her knife, ready to throw herself between them. But then a sound tore through the plains. A deep, thunderous horn. Riker froze. From the horizon the dust rose not from wind but from horses. Dozens, then hundreds. Dark silhouettes emerged, Apache riders, swift as ghosts, fierce as the mountains. And at the front rode Hawkstone, tall, iron still, eyes sharp enough to cut steel. His braided hair whipped behind him like a banner of war. Maraya let out a trembling breath. He came. Hawkstone and the riders reached them within seconds. They surrounded Elias and Maraya, forming a circle of protection. Riker backed away, shaking. No, this ain't how it. Hawkstone pointed his spear at Riker's chest. "Enough," he said in a low, commanding voice that echoed like thunder. Riker fired once in panic. The bullet grazed Hawkstone's arm, but the Apache leader didn't flinch. In less than a heartbeat, 2 Apache riders rushed forward, disarmed Riker, and brought him to his knees. Riker screamed, "I'm the law!" Hawkstone stepped closer. "Out here, there is only justice." Maraya stepped forward weakly, supported by Elias. "He hunted us, sold our people, hurt those who helped." Hawkstone's jaw tightened. His gaze burned. The earth remembers such men. Riker begged then pathetically, cowardly, "It was Mason. It was my cousin. I only... Hawkstone raised his hand. Silence. Then he said, "Take him." The Apache warriors dragged Riker away toward the canyon, toward the land he had used to trap others. His screams faded into the wind. Hawkstone turned to Maraya next, his voice softening. "You are safe now, sister." Maraya bowed her head. "Because of him." She nodded toward Elias. Elias felt suddenly small beneath Hawkstone's stare. But the Apache leader extended his hand. "You saved her. For that, our people owe you life for life." Elias shook his hand with quiet awe. Maraya stepped closer to Elias. "You could have left me in the street." "I couldn't," he whispered. "You risked everything. I'd do it again." Her eyes softened, gentle, grateful, something deeper. Hawkstone approached Elias again. "You may travel with us. We will tend your wounds. You will reach safety." Elias nodded. "Thank you." As Maraya leaned into Elias for support, Hawkstone watched them, curious, almost approving. "You walked into danger to save her," he said. "Few men do such things." Elias felt Maraya's hand find his. He intertwined his fingers with hers. "I didn't save her," Elias said. "She saved me too." Maraya's breath caught. Words failed her, but her eyes said everything. They followed the Apache riders eastward, the sky bleeding into deep purples and golds. Hawks circled overhead. The winds carried the scent of new beginnings. For the first time since dawn, Elias felt peace. Maraya walked beside him, her shoulder bandaged anew, her step steady. Her hand never left his. And behind them, far away, the canyon swallowed the last echoes of Deputy Riker's screams. Ahead, under the vast red horizon, waited healing, safety, and an uncertain future, but one they would face together.